and welcome to Newswire. I'm Ayza Omer. Now, the US President Donald Trump has sent a letter to Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan requesting his country's help to end the 17-year conflict in Afghanistan. This comes just 2 weeks after engaging in a Twitter spat with the Pakistani leader for doing nothing in the war on terror. Now, to understand what this means now for Pakistan-US relations in light of faltering peace talks with the Taliban in Afghanistan and US plans of troop withdrawal, we are joined here today by retired Air Vice Marshal in Defense analyst Chaudhry. Thank you so much for joining Newswire. Let me just get to the point. What is your take on the letter received by Prime Minister Imran Khan from President Trump?
I think it's a reality check for the United States, and that tells you that there's a difference between one man speaking his mind and the institution speaking its own deliberate, well thought out opinion. So I think that letter is a reflection of what the American institutions about Pakistan's role, what it has been, and how it can still be helpful in terms of bringing peace or contributing to the peace in Afghanistan. So I think it's in a way a recognition of what Pakistan has done over the years. It doesn't really mean that the U.S. reservations about Pakistan have vanished in thin air. No, that's not the case. Neither has Pakistan's reservations about the United States' role in Afghanistan melted away. I think it's just a recognition that both sides need to bring this war to an end. The United States more so desperately because it wants out of Afghanistan, and President Trump has identified that as one of his objectives for 2019, that is, he wants to get out of Afghanistan. Now, whether he does that with the war, with closing war, if at all possible, with the Taliban, with the Afghan government, and of course Pakistan's support and help that he has asked for, or by handing it all over to Eric Prince and then just taking some moving stock.
But yes, Mr. Shahzad, before we get into the details of how if there is even a strategy to tackle the troop withdrawal in Afghanistan, I want to explore a little more on the political side of this, on Trump's administration. Just 2 weeks ago, he was bad-mouthing Pakistan's efforts, not recognizing them or not acknowledging them. In fact, going right out in an interview with Fox News, saying that they've done nothing despite the billions we've shared. What do you think really happened in terms of realistically seeing how the turn of events have happened? What happened to change this?
Well, I think in the first place, what President Trump said really did not mean much to me. I had said so in a number of my interviews on the subject at that time as well, because obviously he's given to shoot from the hip. So, and neither was the question directly based on Pakistan. It was about Afghanistan. It was about, whatever America's interests are. Had absolutely no mention of Pakistan, but he brought Pakistan in one way or the other to identify that I've stopped the aid of Pakistan for doing this. Now, that is what he shot off, and that sent in and of course then followed it up with a Twitter tweet that he did. But anyway, that's behind us. The reality, like I said, is more in terms of institutional engagement. Alice Wells has been around for a long, long time. She keeps coming back every month practically. Secretary Pompeo came in with the new government as the new government was sworn in. And similarly, there have been contacts with the U.S. administration of the new government, and more so looking in terms of how Pakistan can be of assistance in the Afghan problem. And I think there's signs of it already when the Taliban have agreed to meeting the U.S. side, and they're doing that in Qatar. They've had 2 rounds there. So all I'm saying is that, look, that is the more institutional way of managing Afghanistan or coming to a solution there. President Trump surely by himself does not reflect, in my opinion, neither has he ever reflected, in my opinion, the exact intent of what the U.S. wants to do.
Right, and now if we were to talk a little more about how the Pakistan Foreign Ministry responded to this letter. Now, of course, the contents of this letter have not yet been disclosed to the public. We've also not had any statement come in from the U.S. State Department. But Prime Minister Imran Khan, when he engaged in a Twitter spat with Trump earlier, 2 weeks ago, has categorically said where Pakistan has helped out and remained committed in this fight in war on terror. How do you feel like they're responding now to this letter?
The Pakistani government has, I think, taken a very pragmatic route. And even in the case of, I'll give you one more analogy there. That is as far as the Indian foreign minister's statement when on the Kartarpura opening, when she said that there was a bit of a exchange of barbs between Pakistan and India. And the Pakistani side came out and said that we'll go only by the letter that the Indian Prime Minister or the Indian government has written to Pakistan. So what comes in writing in terms of letters, etc., or formal official communication becomes the basis of how to take things forward, rather than replying to every statement that comes out of it. Could be politically motivated. Domestic politics needs maybe being satisfied by that statement. So really, that you got to look at a statement in a different way than what comes out in black and white before you in terms of a letter. So this letter that President Trump has written to the Prime Minister or to the government of Pakistan is more official, more deliberated, more sort of thought out, reach out to Pakistan. And so therefore, that is how nations must function. And it is equally important for Pakistan, as the Prime Minister reflected, for Pakistan to do whatever it can to ensure that the war does come to a close in Afghanistan, and whatever contribution Pakistan can make, should make, because that is also in the interest of Pakistan, to make sure that the war really comes to an end and peace returns to our neighborhood.
But is this in a way also acknowledging all that Pakistan has done so far?
Yes, surely. I mean, the letter says that. That Pakistan has made a contribution. So it surely has. After all, giving away the lives of so many people in Pakistan, 75,000 is counted, but anyway, let's say whatever the figure is. And in terms of the opportunity cost, in terms of economic cost, etc., there's so much that Pakistan has sacrificed in this war, willingly or unwillingly. We become unwittingly victims of it as well. So I think Pakistan has done very well in that sense, and Pakistan has fought it out. Pakistan did not depend on anyone else, whereas the world still needs Pakistan to support its stance in Afghanistan or its way out in Afghanistan. So I think Pakistan stands very well in terms of its diplomatic as well as strategic position as to what it can do, what is its potential, and how it has contributed to the entire global effort to fight terrorism.
Now, the letter also stated categorically that contributing on the peace process, trying to bring peace in the region, Pakistan would benefit a lot, especially in terms of US and Pakistan relations. Is that somehow a veiled threat, as we have usually seen from Trump administration? Or is this can be seen in another light?
I think what is almost an imperative, because I feel that without Pakistan, the US strategy in this region perhaps may not have enough, especially in terms of Afghanistan, enough legs to stand on. So in that sense, Pakistan's position is recognized, and it is an indirect way of recognizing that position, perhaps veiling it with the fact that, the US and Pakistan can have a good relationship. I think there's a compulsion on both sides to keep a more, if not a vibrant, at least a functional contact with each other. And that sort of a contact has always been there, especially now when the US has more focused interest in seeing an end to the Afghan war. So I feel that leverage that Pakistan carries over the US has come into eminence. Even despite that, or other than that also, Pakistan and the US will need to have a functional relationship for many other reasons.
Right. And now what will be interesting to see how this story unfolds in the coming days, how this relationship evolves between US and Pakistan. But what I'm also eager to know is that so far US and other parties interested in this to resolve the conflict in the region have constantly accused Pakistan directly or indirectly for harboring terrorists, for being a safe haven or a mothership of terrorism. How will Pakistan counter those arguments now, because they will eventually be brought to the peace table?
Well, I mean, this is going back to the rhetoric that has been used to malign Pakistan unnecessarily. It is a failure of the U.S. Strategy, the U.S. Politics and diplomacy in Afghanistan, that it has tried to pin on Pakistan, that failure, using Pakistan as a scapegoat. So I think that's not going to function any longer. The world does realize the difficulties that Pakistan is in, simply because of the fact that we've been in a very long war.
Yes.
Almost now 17, 18 years. So I think we've paid a price for it. And the place that we stand at today is essentially a reflection of that. The world recognizes and understands that. Pakistan is too important to fail for the world, obviously for many reasons. And nobody would like Pakistan as a nuclear state to become destabilized in any shape and form. So I don't think that that kind of rhetoric will again begin to depend on Pakistan at all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shehzad. Joining us now is Defense Analyst General Ejaz from Islamabad and also political analyst from Afghanistan, Muslim Shehzad. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newswire. I want to start with you, Mr. Muslim. How do you feel about this letter written by President Trump to Prime Minister Imran Khan?
Thanks for having me. Well, indeed, this is a good opportunity for both Pakistan and Afghanistan that created. And for sure, the new letter of President Trump shows, as he mentioned, that Afghanistan is the biggest priority of the United States, and there should be a secure and there should be a peace settlement between the Afghan government and the Taliban. And the Pakistani government especially asked Prime Minister Imran Khan to consolidate and to coordinate about this issue and help Afghanistan to end the bloodshed here in Afghanistan. So in this case, I believe that this is a good opportunity for Islamabad to leave just the fame of being sanctuaries of terrorists in its territory, and also for Afghanistan, which utilizes this opportunity for end of bloodshed in the country, especially at the time that Mr. Khalilzad is also in Pakistan and also has telegraphed mentioned today the Taliban leadership, especially from the Doha office, are also in Pakistan. So this is a good opportunity for both countries and both neighbors to utilize from that, and there will be a peace in Afghanistan, and there will be a good chance for Pakistan too.
So, Mr. Muslim, would you feel that, do you feel that maybe there was a dearth of participation or a contribution from the Pakistani side, especially in these key meetings that have taken place in the last month? 2 key meetings that have taken place with Taliban and the US trying to come to some kind of peace deal in how to resolve the conflict in the region?
Well, as you know, that Prime Minister Imran Khan also mentioned that we are fully agreed to help in the peace settlement between the Taliban and the Afghan government, as President Trump has. And traveling of the Taliban leadership from the Doha office, especially Mr. Abbas Stanizai and other people from there to the Pakistan, as Telegraph said, there is a kind of green light from the Pakistan, which there will be a kind of coordination, and there will be maybe a kind of settlement between the Taliban and Afghan government and Pakistan help on that. Because without the coordination of the Pakistani government, traveling of these people from Doha to Pakistan is impossible. And it shows that the Pakistani government, especially in the seeing of from the media outlets, there is a kind of coordination, and there is a kind of saying that they will help between this Taliban and the Afghan government to come to the tables.
Okay, so let's ask General Ejaz here what your take on this letter is. There is a lot of debate going on the wording of the letter categorically, whether it is an invitation or an acknowledgement from President Trump that Pakistan has done something finally. And this comes in just 2 weeks after him claiming that, well, Pakistan's not really done much. It's not given much in this war on terror. What is your opinion on it?
Well, Ayza, I think there is a realization in the United States. First thing, they are coming to terms with the ground realities in Afghanistan, and they know they cannot exit Afghanistan without the help of Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
So this at summit level communication between the President of the United States of America and the Prime Minister of Pakistan is a good, Omer, I would say, a good beginning, a good start after exchange of some tweets which were not very pleasant. So there is a realization at the level of America, and I think it's a good beginning. I don't know who was the other commentator, but there is no such thing that there were some sanctuaries or the Pakistani cooperation was half-baked or half-hearted. There are no sanctuaries in Pakistan from where Afghans or the Taliban are operating in Afghanistan based in Pakistan. So there is no such thing. It is old rhetoric.
But General Ejaz, don't you feel this rhetoric is going to come back while these negotiations take place? Inviting Pakistan to the table is one thing, but continuing with the same narrative, how will the Prime Minister and the incumbent government handle this, this dichotomy in this attempt to bring us to the table?
Well, I think, as I said, now since they have realized and they are accepting the ground realities in Afghanistan, Pakistan has always been a great help to the U.S. for their fight on war on terror in Afghanistan with regards to our logistics, intelligence cooperation, and airspace usage that we have been there, and we have helped them decimate Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. But somehow they were trying to externalize their failure in Afghanistan, and they wanted to sell the idea that probably Pakistan's cooperation has been half-baked or half-hearted. But in their heart of heart, they know without our help, they would not have reached this far. And now, at this stage, when Pakistan has released Mullah brother of Quetta Shura from Pakistan, and he is already participating in the Zalme Khalidad initiative in Doha. So when we are already cooperating, I think it would give them a good face saving, and it would be a good beginning. Though the mistrust and that thing, it would take time to bridge that misunderstanding that has already existed. But it's a good beginning, and I think there will be some positive outcome, because I personally feel they are tired of this war and they realize, and before President Donald Trump goes into next term elections, I think by that time they should be exiting Afghanistan.
But don't you feel that also plays a bit of a risk? And I want to hear, General Ejaz, your point of view on this as well. But quickly going to Muslim Shehzad right now, President Donald Trump is looking for another presidential race coming up, and suddenly the foot is on the accelerator. They're looking to withdraw or come to a solution very quickly. Now, this has happened twice before. US entering Afghanistan and leaving in a very quick fix, shoddy manner, not really resolving the issue. Do you feel that this might be going down the same road, or is this probably going to be different?
Well, if you see the internal issues of the United States, for sure, maybe there will be a combining issue for President Trump. But at all, I don't believe personally that the United States will leave Afghanistan like 1989, as the USSR leaves Afghanistan and they leave everything, and there become civil war after that, the Taliban arise. But please let me mention something about Mr. General, as he mentioned about the centuries of denial of centuries of Taliban in Pakistan. I was in Karachi recently. There was a joke between our friends in the Karachi airport that there was places that Mullah Mansour delivered lots of time from here to abroad. And I believe that, please, Mr. General, once you read the book of Mr. Babar, Nasrullah Babar, the former Interior Minister of Pakistan, or Mr. Musharraf, or Mr. Hussein Aqani, or the others, and it will give you a clear picture of what is going on in the region. For sure, when the President Trump sent a letter to the Prime Minister Khan, it means that for sure Pakistan plays a great role on that. And despite of that, traveling of the Taliban leaders from the Doha office to Pakistan is saying clearly what is going on. So denial of that is not something that we hide sand from two fingers. It is not possible indeed. Yesterday, the NATO Secretary General very clearly named Pakistan and the sanctuaries of terrorists in there. So everyone is wrong. Hussein Aqani is wrong, Mr. Musharraf is wrong, Nasrat Babur is wrong, Afghanistan is wrong, United States is wrong, NATO is wrong. So this is not the solution.
General Ejaz, would you like to counter that argument by Mr. Muslim Shehzad?
Unfortunately, I'm not hearing it very cleverly, because where I am, probably the signals are not very strong. Is he trying to say that there have been sanctuaries in Pakistan?
Yes, he's basically contesting, quoting several ministers and important authority figures in Pakistan, saying that there have been proven again, time and again, safe havens in Pakistan.
Well, this is his view, and I don't want to contest his views. I know I have been part of these operations, and I have participated in this war on terror while I was commanding an infantry division. And I know, for that matter, there has never been a state-sponsored sanctuaries or the sanctuaries provided by design. When there were 4 million Afghans staying in Pakistan, well, we cannot rule out that out of those 4 million, there were not a few thousand Taliban living amongst them. That is, Taliban living here and fighting in Afghanistan, there is a probability. Out of 4 million, there could be a few thousand living there. But when we talk of sanctuaries, that speaks of a state policy. And what I am saying, Pakistan has never had a policy to undermine the U.S. war on terror in Afghanistan as a policy.
Would you also like to expand on the different military operations that have taken place in 2014 and more recently, and as a result, Pakistan has seen such a setback? We saw over 130 children killed as a result of these militants as a fallout to military operations in Waziristan. Would you like to expand on that, just to maybe give an idea of what kind of activities have been taking place within our borders to combat terrorism?
That is precisely what I am saying, that when they were attacking our children, they were attacking our civilians, they were attacking Pakistan army troops in Pakistan. Now, we cannot say that they were the Taliban, we were hosting them, so they were attacking us and they were attacking Americans. So there were areas and they had become sort of no-go areas, and we had to undertake such major operations, 7 major operations in the federally administered tribal area and the border adjacent to Afghanistan.
We've seen over 1 million people displaced internally as a result of these.
And as a result of that, so there have been Taliban or terrorists hiding in those areas. But when we talk of sanctuaries, then we are doubting the sincerity and commitment of Pakistan. And when somebody tries to make a claim that we were doing it as a state policy, that is an abhorrent idea, and I don't really approve of it, and I don't really agree to such a notion.
But it is a rather contentious issue, Mr. Muslim. It is a big problem, and we've seen this time and again when the Red Army withdrew. We saw that there was a sudden power vacuum within Afghanistan, and as a result, regional powers did try to wage their own proxies, support their own proxies to establish their dominance. Given the circumstances today, Taliban reaching out, trying to establish peace, to establish some kind of timeline where this can be resolved. Do you feel that maybe this is again a threat from neighboring countries? And I'm not just talking about Pakistan, let's talk about India also and other regional powers.
Once I asked from a former Indian ambassador in Kabul that you are playing also a kind of proxy, as you claim about, as we said about it, India and Pakistan, which are playing in the ground of Afghanistan. He told me very frankly, yes, we have proxy in Afghanistan, and our proxy are Afghan people. What it means? It means, please, once yourself come to the Kabul and see, if you say I'm an Indian and I'm a Pakistani, what will be the impression of the people? The second issue, when you say about the centuries of terrorists, Mr. General, I think here was Osama bin Laden and Abu Tabat also are among the Afghan refugees. The madrasas of Akani also are among the Afghan refugees. The Mullah Samiul Akura Khatak Madrasa, which they clearly declared jihad in Afghanistan, are among Afghan refugees. So these are the facts, and you can't hide it. Let us throw out the blame game. The reality is something which we see it, and now everyone knows that. Let us, as an Afghan, as a Pakistani, accept the reality of the on the ground, especially when we talk about the proxy war and about the being as a proxy field of Afghanistan. See the situation in Pakistan and India. See the situation of economical situation of Pakistan. See the image of Pakistan, especially in the NATO summit, in the United States, in UK, in Afghanistan, and everywhere. So what it means? It means now the time, if there is, in case, if you say about the TTP, for example, Mullah Fazlullah, which killed in corner of Afghanistan, no-go area, Afghan government accepted. Yes, we don't have control on that. But when you talk about Pakistan, how you can hide these issues? How you can hide Quetta Shura? How you can hide Peshawar Shura? It is impossible. So in this case, I believe this is a good opportunity to throw out this defame from Pakistan name, and there should be a kind of good relation between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Okay,
so
but
this will be.
I understand your point here. You're trying to establish why Pakistan, whether Pakistan will continue to hang on to this narrative that there are no safe havens. We can get into this very long debate on what actions have been taken place, what Al-Qaeda leaders have been arrested time and again in raids post 9/11. But let me ask you this about the disintegration of the stakeholders. Of course, nobody is more important than the Afghan stakeholder himself, which is seeing the biggest death toll there in recent years. inside as well, Taliban factions are not agreeing, not coming to the table or uniting behind one front. How will this impede peace progress in the region, and where can Pakistan play a crucial role in bringing them forward in unity?
Well, ma'am, for sure you have traveled from Lahore to Islamabad to Karachi also. I was in Karachi, Islamabad.
We just have 1 minute left, so if you could just give me in a nutshell.
Very, I believe, very briefly, that the Taliban without Pakistan is a fish without water. They have centuries, their families are there, their funding from there, their arms from there, their camps from there. So there should be end of a blame game. And for sure, the Afghan government and the Afghan people should not sidelined. And if sidelined by US or by Pakistan or by any other country, by Russia, Iran, so there will not be a peace for a long time.
Coming back to Mr. General Ejaz, we were talking to Muslim Shehzad. The argument remains that until or unless Pakistan steps up, we will not be able to see steps up, takes responsibility of the safe havens here. Could you expand very quickly just to highlight all that has been done within Pakistan to fight terrorists here? And I'm talking about the number of casualties we've seen to the tune of 75,000 people dead so far.
Look, people like Muslim Shehzad are spoilers. Why I'm saying it? When they catch Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, it was an intelligence failure, and we accept that. Now, can he justify presence of 9 terrorists of 9/11? Why they were there in America and why they got flying training from there, and how could they hijack 4 planes and take them into buildings? Was it not an intelligence failure? Was America doing it by design, doing it, training them, and then letting it happen, and then starting the operation? So there are intelligence failures. They have failed many times in America, and we did fail in locating Osama bin Laden. But that intelligence failure does not mean that it was a state policy.
So, General Ejaz, just quickly summarizing, since we're out of time for now, playing the blame game is not going to lead to any conclusion and definitely going to impede progress in all stakeholders trying to bring peace in the region. With that, let's take a quick short break. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Newswire. Now on the line, we have 2 new guests who will be talking about this ongoing story. I would like to welcome Mr. Rupert Stone, journalist from Berlin, joining via Skype, and Mr. Intizar Khadim from Kabul, political analyst. Welcome to the show. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Rupert. What's your take on President Trump maybe shifting gears and now this letter to the Pakistani Prime Minister, asking them to provide their complete help and facilitation in this peace process they're trying to establish in Afghanistan?
Well, thanks for having me on. I think the immediate reason for this letter is that the US Special Envoy on Afghan reconciliation, Mr. Khalilzad, is visiting a number of countries at the moment, including today Pakistan. So Trump has written to the Pakistani Prime Minister asking for cooperation with Mr. Khalilzad's efforts. I mean, in the longer term perspective, I mean, Pakistan has already cooperated with US efforts on peace, so I don't really know why Trump sees the need to write this letter now. I mean, for example, a few weeks ago, Mullah Baradar, who's the former Taliban deputy emir, who'd been arrested and detained by Pakistan, was released. And 2 other Taliban officials were released by Pakistan after that. So it seems there's already been some cooperation with these new US efforts to pursue a peace process in Afghanistan. So my take is that this letter is just trying to strengthen those efforts further, and perhaps because Trump lashed out at Pakistan quite recently in an interview, it might be trying to smooth things over. Given that the Pakistanis seem to have been quite insulted by that.
Mr. Intizar, what's your take on this? What was the need for President Trump to write this letter to Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan? And also, what role is Pakistan going to play in this peace process?
Well, I think Donald Trump is trying to play a different brand of diplomacy with Imran Khan, or maybe in Pakistan. he's trying to shake right hand with Pakistan and hold rock on the left. I'm sure that Pakistan and the United States has not been very friendly for the last so many years. And you may remember the first tweet of the year 2018, and he called Pakistan with different names and tagged him like not a good friend. Now Donald Trump is shifting his strategy, or maybe his stance, not strategically but tactically, which means that he still have doubt on Pakistan or maybe Imran Khan that they will be playing very effective way, bringing the irreconcilable Taliban to the peace negotiation table. I'm sure Donald Trump is doing this for the urgency of the United States to bring peace in Afghanistan, because they have been sick and tired of fighting for the last 15 years. I remember that Donald Trump said in many of his interviews that behind the ongoing war, there has been a very sneaky hand of Pakistan. So now he's shifting the rhetoric, he's shifting the literature he was using toward Pakistan. You may remember some days ago there has been a war of words in tweets between Imran Khan and Donald Trump. And now after weeks, he's just sending a letter, a friendly letter requesting Imran Khan to play a positive role. So now we can say that Pakistan is one of the indivisible part of the Afghan peace. They have a good relationship with the Taliban leadership. They understand what's going on in Afghanistan. So this is an important step has been taken by Donald Trump, and I see a very positive result of that in coming weeks or maybe months in Afghanistan to bring peace to Afghanistan.
Okay, now I'm going to bring in our third guest for the evening, Ms. Maria Sultan. Thank you for joining us here from Islamabad, the defense analyst. I want to ask you about this letter that's come in from President Donald Trump asking Pakistan to do more, help more, facilitate more, whatever words you want to use there, since the contents of the letter have not yet been disclosed. So we're going to go with the positive side. Now, I want to ask you here what your take on this letter is. And in any way, does this reflect on Trump's change in strategy? Is this him acknowledging that Pakistan does have a crucial role to play here in the peace process in Afghanistan?
This is definitely a huge change in terms of how they have been dealing with Pakistan recently, or you could say for almost a decade plus now. There is no denying the fact that Pakistan has a positive role to play when it comes to Afghanistan. But much more than that, the approach which has been taken by Washington and at times by Kabul as well has been one in which Pakistan has always been sidelined, and our efforts have been seen through a very, what could you say, like most probably through a minimized lens. While the reality is that you do need honest brokers, you do need people who can work through this process and bring all parties engaged to one level field. But the biggest question, or I think the test, has always been how do you build up the trust once you always kill peace efforts, whether it was the Mali talks, whether it was the Qatar process. We have seen that there has always been backstabbing, or there has been change in policy once people have come to the table. So this is one of the biggest
challenges that we're seeing. Mr. Rupert, let me quickly pose this question to you. As Maria was highlighting, one of the biggest challenges of trying to resolve the issue here while trying to bring Pakistan also to the peace negotiation table is to stop the blame game. Where do you see the stakeholders standing on this right now? Because accusations have come in from left, right and center blaming Pakistan for being a safe haven for terrorists. How are we going to resolve this issue? How do you feel the Trump administration is going to handle this?
That's a good question. I mean, blame game on this issue isn't new, and these sorts of accusations have been flinging around for years. I think we should hope that much of that is just rhetoric and politicians playing to the crowd, and that behind the scenes the diplomats are working on this in a much more collaborative and hard-headed way. Certainly Alice Wells, who's the top US diplomat for South and Central Asia, has spent a lot of time in Pakistan. Mr. Khalilzad is very experienced as a diplomat, and he is an Afghan. So I think with these sorts of seasoned diplomats, we should hope that there's a more serious attitude behind the scenes than we're hearing in public.
Okay, Mr. Intizar, let me ask you this as we progress ahead and the story evolves, or what the contents of the letter were, what was need in the stance. We've heard different points of view. Let's talk a little about what Afghanistan is going through right now in terms of establishing a peace process with the US. The Taliban have come out clearly saying we don't want to speak to anybody but the US directly, and establish a timeline of when these forces are going to withdraw. Now, can you elaborate a little about the sentiments within Afghanistan? What is the word on the street in terms of all the stakeholders who are being involved internationally in bringing the Taliban and the Afghan government to the table, the peace negotiating table?
Well, I think the elongation of the Afghan war has been a giant mistake between all the partners, the United States, the NATO member countries, the Afghan government, and the Taliban by itself. They just made some strategic blunders. That's why a lot of bloodshed has been occurring in Afghanistan on a daily basis. Now, everybody understands in Afghanistan that every side of the war in Afghanistan has been negligent, and they did not do their moral job to end the war in Afghanistan. Now, it's one of the things in Afghanistan that the United States and the Afghan government just focus on Kabul, and that's why they forgot all the provinces to bring order and peace. And they just focus on Afghanistan and they forgot the region. Now the strategic shift of the American administration is now very optimistic. And he's there, including Pakistan was one of the important players. And now you see Khalilzad is just traveling around the region, and they just, including Russia, will be part of the negotiation. So I think there is a lot of hard arguments still remain on table, untouched and undiscussed. Taliban still very strict that every single American should withdraw from Afghanistan, and then they have to come back to the table, and they will be talking only with American on the condition of the absolute withdrawal of the Americans. Now, Jim Mattis, the DOD minister in America, he said that we would like to end the war in Afghanistan, but we would not like to leave Afghanistan until we are ensured that we are safe in our homes. So it's two very controversial stains between Taliban and the Americans. But at the same time, if you come back to the Afghanistan government stance, it's also very tricky and very bad. I can call it like time bomb with if you watch. The 12-member negotiation committee, which has been appointed by President Ghani to talk with the Taliban, they are not up to the task. They are not committed. They are not professionally capable of talking with the Taliban, and Taliban will just reject to talk with these people, or maybe at least if Taliban are talking with the 12-member negotiation committee of the Afghan government, Taliban will be on the winning side, because these people does not have that high capacity of negotiation, and the Afghan government and the Afghan nation will be in losing side. So anyway, now the talk on the streets, the talk on the media in Afghanistan is quite optimistic. Everybody is hoping that peace will come to Afghanistan, but every side this time should fulfill their moral and also professional responsibilities to end the war and bring the peace.
Okay, Ms. Maria, you spoke about backstabbing has to stop, the blame game has to stop, yet there are statements coming out from unofficial sources, though, right now, on the letter saying that, well, this was really a warning to Pakistan. The Foreign Office in Pakistan has taken it as a very welcomed approach, because the Prime Minister Imran Khan, the incumbent government, have constantly been saying, even prior to the elections, that the strategy that needs to be employed by global forces involved in the peace process in Afghanistan is peace talks. Military solution is not the solution. How do you feel this unfolds from the Foreign Office perspective here in Pakistan? How do we contribute to this?
Well, I think the real question here is that what is it that we are after in Afghanistan? Are we actually looking for peace? And if it is peace, then is it going to be negotiated peace, or is it going to be enforced peace? Because if it's negotiated peace, then somebody has to give way. And here the responsibility is not on Pakistan, not on the United States, but it is essentially on the Afghans. And that means what? That basically means that somebody has to rethink about the Afghan constitution and has to think that how do they intend giving power to the warring factions, which here in this case are the Afghan Taliban. The reality of the matter is this, that while everybody wants peace, but nobody wants to give anything on ground. Hence, there's no possibility that you can have negotiated peace. Because in negotiations, somebody has to give something, somebody has to win something, and somebody has to lose something. It doesn't work that one side wins and the other side gains nothing. Now, that said, now let's look at the dilemma which the United States is facing. The dilemma which they're facing on ground in Afghanistan is that they've spent around $1 trillion plus in terms of money with regards to the war in Afghanistan. It was considered to be a good war in comparison to the Iraq war. But the reality of the day is that the situation on ground is fast deteriorating. And the reason it's fast deteriorating is because the security apparatus, the economic future, and the political sustainability of the Afghan state is in question mark. The Afghan unity government or for that matter, the Afghan elections outcomes have not been the most desired option or preferred option for all members of the Afghan state. So this is contested, and if it is contested, then it has been guaranteed. And if it's been guaranteed, then there is a bigger issue here. And then when it comes to regional powers, then there's again a bigger problem here that if you want regional powers to play the role, then what are the people who were sitting in Afghanistan doing, number one? Number two, United States is no longer an outside power to this region or to Afghanistan. They have been here for almost 18 plus years, almost. And if this is the case, then somebody has to do real stock taking.
Right.
They have to see, one, how the state is going to go forward. Number two, what can the region actually do? And number three, how do you expect peace to be negotiated when you don't even recognize that the warring factions should be even talked about? Now, and let's not forget about the Haqqanis as well. Haqqanis are also by far one part, or you can say the military council of the Taliban in one sense or the other. So it's interesting that you say we will talk to one part or one section of the Taliban and we will not talk to the military council. It's like somebody saying we'll talk to the U.S. president, but the U.S. armed forces are going to be considered as terrorists.
But let me hold you there, Ms. Maria. Let me hold you there very quickly, because as we talk about the challenges that the Afghans face themselves, the biggest holder in the region's lack of diplomacy when dealing with Pakistan, someone who he says is a key player in resolving these issues.
I wouldn't say this current moment's comparable to the 1990s. I mean, I think there's more US engagement. And I mean, I think it's possible to be too bleak about the US-Pakistani relationship. I mean, yes, the United States has suspended aid to Pakistan this year. There's been a lot of hostile and insulting rhetoric.
Yes.
And there have been some other punitive measures. For instance, the cancellation of a joint military training program was quite significant. But there are various options available to the US that Trump hasn't so far taken. For instance, he hasn't designated Pakistan as a state sponsor of terrorism, which some people have proposed in the past. He hasn't revoked Pakistan's major non-NATO ally status. And he hasn't conducted unilateral drone strikes or special operations raids into Pakistan. All of these are measures that have been proposed by hawks in America as a way of punishing Pakistan that he hasn't used. And I'm sure part of the reason for that is that he knows the United States needs Pakistan's buy-in and cooperation for a peace deal. And Trump obviously wants to get out of Afghanistan. I mean, actually, to his credit, he realizes the military effort is disastrous. And he's obviously scared his aides into getting to work on a peace deal because he wants to withdraw. So I think there's more of a silver lining to this current situation than the rhetoric would suggest.
Maria Sultan, I want to come to you about this comment that Mr. Rupert has given in terms of what Trump could have also done in order to punish Pakistan. Now, how do you see this?
He does have some weight in his argument, but the reality of the matter is that the United States did try all these options. Let's not forget that they did go and have unilateral action in Pakistan when it came to OPL, in terms of Ray Davis, in terms of Salala, in terms of a number of other places when these options were tried. But the reality, as he stated, is that you need countries to have a buy-in into peace. You can't force countries, especially a nuclear state, to be pushed that far. The biggest challenge which we have in this policy or this triangular relationship is that the United States wants to set or reset a bilateral relationship on the behest of a third country. How do you do that? How do you tell that, actually we want to have excellent relationship, but we want the third country to stabilize, and actually the entire focus of this relationship is going to be based not out of Pakistan-U.S. relations, but it will be a culmination of what is happening between U.S.-Afghanistan and then Afghanistan-Pakistan, and then most specifically for the internal dynamics of Afghanistan. So this is the devil in the detail, which is putting this relationship in a hard position. One, how do you establish bilateral strong relationship when it is always based on an external situation, and in this case, a third country, because that third country also has some perspective on it, and they tend to see things this way or that way.
So, Mr. Intezar, sorry, go ahead.
And then the last, not least, the most important factor is that if we are looking for peace, if you're looking for a peace in which Pakistan has to be brought in as a stable partner, then you can't go around having drone attacks on the very interlocutors which you're hoping that they should be brought forward and they should be putting a buy-in into peace. Because if this is the message that you're giving, that if you're a warring faction, you come in and you try to settle peace through negotiation, we will kill you either through a drone attack or there will be other hit-and-kill operations. So
that attributes to basically every relationship with every incumbent government that U.S. has put forward with Pakistan. But Mr. Intezar, if I were to ask you in terms of the inside situation of Afghanistan as we were speaking, and here I mean that now the Taliban is very different from back in the 90s, from post 9/11 also. There are various factions, not behind one leader, but various. And also in light of, for example, how the warlord Alipur was released with so much protest, the Afghan security forces finally released him. In light of what is happening within Afghanistan in terms of the different stakeholders there, what role does Pakistan play? Where is the biggest challenge here right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing in the biggest dream for the Afghan people is to live in order in a country where the law enforcement is a dominant factor to rule the country. It's not happening. You just mentioned Alipur. Every elite of Afghanistan who were just supporting the law enforcement have been wear down when he has been arrested and then he has been released by the pressure of one faction. I think every person in Afghanistan should be law-abiding citizen, which is not happening. Some people in Afghanistan is above the law, and they're thinking that they have to control the law instead that law should be controlling them. So one of the big challenges in Afghanistan is the existence of such factions. Second is the war-hungry politician. You will see in the government, in outside of the government, they still pull the string to ensure their personal gains in Afghanistan rather than to be safeguarding the national interest. For example, in peace, you will see a number of strongmen in Afghanistan, maybe in the government, some figures, they would not bargain that the national interest should be coming in return of losing their personal interest. They are not doing that. Now, what happens? Every day people are dying, and they're just like seeing this bullshit movie in Afghanistan every day. Third is the very resilient stance of the Taliban so far in Afghanistan. They have not been up to the task that they have to come to the table. They have to give something to get something. So they were always trying to fight, and they just defeat the international community and the Afghan government by power. In return, the Americans did the same. Now, what Pakistan can do, they have to be doing their strategic shift. They have to be redoing what they have designed before. I heard the Hillary Clinton remarks. It also reminded me of Benazir Bhutto when she spoke in London that, yes, American created that, Saudi has been sponsored that, and we implemented the project in Afghanistan of the Taliban. Mr. Lababar and other people said the same. In 2009, Brookings Institute, one of the influential institutes in America, he said that Pakistan is the only country who is sponsoring terrorism on the face of earth. And maybe this Hillary Clinton said a lot of bad remarks about Pakistan. Now, no one can deny.
How do we go forward from here, especially when the blame game seems to be the headline, even while we talk to different analysts and experts from across the globe? A big, big question mark. Can this relationship progress positively, US, Afghanistan, Pakistan?
Well, I think the key thing for the United States to realize is that Pakistan actually has limited control over the Taliban. And in recent years, the Taliban has diversified its foreign contacts. I mean, now it seems to have quite a close relationship with Iran. There are other countries it has contacts with in the region. Uzbekistan, for example, that's very new. Russia. So I think to move forward, the US should be diplomatic and realize there's a limit to what Pakistan can do. Yes, it's an important part of the solution, but it's not the only part.
Mr. Intezar, do you agree with that?
Say that Pakistan still have the leverage to have an influence over the Taliban. I'm not saying that Taliban has been the one of the direct sponsored army of Pakistan who were fighting in Afghanistan. There have been a faction who were ruling Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001. So that has been a case. But I say that Pakistan still can play an important role. Without Pakistan, it will be very hard for the Americans to bring peace to Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Now you may have read the BBC report or maybe the Telegraph report that Doha Taliban team has been traveled to Pakistan to discuss with the leadership about the peace. So I say yes, Pakistan is an important player and they have to be playing a good role to bring peace to Afghanistan and let every person live in order and in peace.
All right, thank you so much. That's all the time we have. Thank you, Mr. Rupert, Mr. Intizar and Maria for contributing to Newswire tonight. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.